Välkommen alla sammen, coming at you from maybe my favorite capital city in the world, Copenhagen here. And for this video is something very special. We're going to be going to the wonderful Nationalmuseet right here. Now this is one of the top 2 or 3 best Viking museums in the world, but that's not why I like it, because you know me, my favorite time period is the Bronze Age, the Nordic Bronze Age, and there is no better place in the world for Norse Bronze Age stuff than in this museum. So we're going to be going into the Viking stuff and the Stone Age stuff and maybe even some Renaissance stuff if we get time for that, but I really want to focus on the Bronze Age stuff here because this is one of the most interesting parts in history with not a lot of information, but lots to uncover that is very, very important. So here we go. So guys, I'm going in the side entrance here, and I recommend everybody do that because you will first of all skip a lot of the lines and traffic going in, but second of all, once you get in, you get straight into these beautiful, beautiful rune stones. Real archaeological finds that they found all over Denmark, and it just pops right out you the most beautiful thing right as soon as you walk in. But we will come back to this at the end because I'm going to take you in kind of a circle of how the museum progresses through time. So what this museum does I like a lot as it progresses. You walk around in a circle basically. You're starting in the Stone Age first, and then you move on through the Bronze Age and to the Viking Age. So here it's typical Stone Age stuff, not super impressive. It's just tools and crafts made from mostly stone and bone and antler types of things. Stone Age is really not too impressive, but I think that people were actually a lot smarter back then than we give them credit for, I will say that. Next we have this beautiful elk that has been preserved for more than 8,000 years, and this is basically showing off the types of animals and how they looked in the Stone Age. Here we have an aurochs, and these are the most amazing animals you can see. This thing is so massive standing next to it, taller than me. These are basically the ancestors of our domesticated cattle. And interestingly enough, these seem to have been extinct a very, very long time ago. But one of the letters in our Elder Futhark, which is just about 2,000 years old, or maybe more, we had a letter named after the aurochs, and this was Urhus. So somehow, some way, people had knowledge of this about 2,000 years ago, and it was so important to them that they had to basically create an alphabet letter out of it. Then we are getting to the Bronze Age, my favorite period, and the very first thing you see when you get in this section is some beautiful arm rings, which I carry replicas of on my online shop if any of you like some of those. But yeah, these are really, really old, and you know, arm rings, it shows here that these were not just a Viking Age thing. Some of these things are from 2,000 years before the Viking Age. Then, next room over, it shows us a little bit of the clothes that have been found from the Bronze Age and what people would have worn there, both women's and men's clothing, and even a sexy little skirt here that I must say turned me on a little bit for some Bronze Age Danish ladies. In this next room here, we have basically a whole room full of amber beads and other jewelry. Now, amber was such a common thing to make jewelry out of in the Viking Age even, but these are from the Bronze Age, like I said, almost 2,000 years before some of them. So definitely a long tradition of use of this in the Norse tradition. And remember, Freya's necklace, Brisingamen, was actually made out of amber, so it would have been beads just like these. And guys, this next room that I'm going to, I must say, is some of the most beautiful artwork I have seen at any museum ever. Look at this beautiful bronze chariot type thing. See my video that I did on the sun wheel, and I covered that artifact too. More artwork here and pottery from the Bronze Age, more sun wheels just like you see here. You'll also run into some of the typical Bronze Age rock carvings, even though those are mostly done in Sweden. Here we go, these are called the Växjö helmets, which I also did a video on, check it out. These are the actual horned helmets that the Norse used to use at the time. Absolutely beautiful, and this is again from almost 2,000 years before the Viking Age. Man, I swear, I have been to all these museums, the hell with the Louvre in France, the hell with the Mona Lisa, the hell with the British Museum. This is some real Norse power that you are going to find at this museum. I absolutely absolutely love it. Look at these beautiful bronze lures. These would have been done in religious ceremonies. They would blow into these for certain purposes, spiritual purposes. We don't exactly know. We have some theories as to why that was done, but either way, we know that the sound is so beautiful coming out of those, as you guys might have heard in Vardruna concerts. Here we see some weapons and some more pottery, basically the types of things that would have been used in the Bronze Age as well. And here is some more jewelry. Again, just goes to show that people were not that primitive back then. These things look very much like the Viking Age jewelry. And here we have just some shields. Now the shields were definitely different than Viking Age shields, as I'm going to show you in just a minute. These actually look and feel even more powerful and sturdy than the Viking Age shields, so who knows how much has been lost over that age. And finally we have here a cock. Bears a very similar resemblance to the statues from the Viking Age we have of Freyr, so this could be a kind of Bronze Age equivalent of this god. Now we are moving into the section after the Bronze Age, so this would be the Iron Age and leading up to the Viking Age, and one of the first things we see here is one of the wagons of Deirberg, a couple wagons that were found in a bog and preserved very well, actually, being, more than 2,000 years old. This is from around 100 BC, believed to be a sacrificial deposit that was offered to the gods or whatever. I don't believe that theory, a lot of the scholars do, but there are some other options that I have done a video about before, but either way, this is one of the largest and, most detailed, rich discoveries of the time. This was 100 BC, like I said, and the things you are seeing here is jewelry and things like that, and judging from the pottery and the artifacts you will find in here, it resembles a lot like the völva that you would find in the Viking Age and their artifacts, like the Oseberg ship, for example. But like I said, this was from almost 1,000 years before the Viking Age, so a very, very early example of what might have been a völva or a spiritual leader or something like that. So moving on to this next section, we are getting more into the Viking Age and the Vendel era, or the migration period just shortly before. So there's a lot of things here. You see some drinking horns, some pottery, lots of jewelry, artifacts, combs, things like that. Just regular day-to-day items, and a lot more of it than we would see in the Bronze Age or Stone Age, for example. And guys, this is for a very good reason. The burials started to happen more as we get into the Vendel era and especially the Viking Age. Before that, the burials were mostly cremations. It even says this in Heimskringla. They called it the cremation age. So the cremation was a normal part of our religion before the Viking Age, but when the Viking Age came around, there were definitely plenty of cremations there too, but it was definitely mostly burials, which is why we have a whole lot more archaeological finds of things from that age, and this is some of them here. My favorite thing from this room actually was this horse's skull that was actually buried with its reins on, looking really beautiful, made out of bronze, kind of like a Lord of the Rings ring wraith type of thing. And of course all the Thor's hammers that I found here. Even I, with all the research I've done into this for my own products, there were still many Thor's hammers here that I didn't even know existed, so it has definitely given some inspiration, and it shows us how important this piece of jewelry was at the time. And guys, this next part is my favorite place in the whole museum, maybe in any museum in the world. It's kind of hidden away in a dark corner, and it's basically a Viking warship, and along the wall there is decorated with all these shields and weapons and things like that. I got absolute goosebumps coming in here. The music was playing dimly, like dark type of thing, war sounds. I had to get myself out of there or I was about to wake up some things that should not be woken up for another 1,000 years. Okay, just being in there, you feel so much power coming from it. And finally, we're circling back around to the runestones that we saw at the start. Now, most of these are from the Viking Age, and they're just, most runestones are simply inscribed as a memorial to the dead. It was a son or a wife or an uncle or a family member, whatever, who carved these runestones in memory of their fallen family member. The ones here are not too impressive or the famous, but there are thousands of these scattered all over Scandinavia and Denmark, and most of them thankfully have been kept in their original nature where they have been found. And guys, remember the video I did a few weeks ago about Norse symbols? Here you see the typical swastika. We did not take this from the east. This is very much a native symbol to the north of Europe, and this is just one of the many dozens or even hundreds of examples that you see on Scandinavian runic inscriptions. So that's about it. I only went to the first floor of the museum because the rest of it is kind of Renaissance era and, like, you know, the more modern times, and I really don't give a shit about that. So I kept it to the first floor of the museum, but the museum is a lot bigger. I did, however, check out this gift shop, which I was about to spend way too much money on, but I did get a couple things. So guys, let me know what you thought about this video. I love going to museums, and I could have made this video so long. I could have spent many hours going in depth into discussion about each of the artifacts that I found in this museum and the meanings behind it and the history and all that, but I didn't want it to be too long. If the video does well, I will go to some more museums and talk about it and make further videos like this, and maybe even do some teamwork collaboration projects. So that's all I have to say for today. Hope you enjoyed. Definitely check this out if you're in Copenhagen. But that's all. Vi ses nästa gång.